What if your birthday, paycheck, or whole week simply vanished? From Y2K panic to February 30th, humans keep breaking time. Tonight, we're diving into 39 moments calendars completely glitched. Nations skipped Fridays, repeated Independence Day, and rewrote entire centuries. Emperors stretched months for politics, then scientists tried patching the mess. Even your phone alarm and GPS can still trip over leap seconds. By the end, you'll understand why no date is truly stable. And you'll never see February, New Year's, or time zones the same. Hit play, and let's watch history's clocks completely fall apart. Y2K bug panic that nearly broke the world's clocks. On New Year's Eve 1999, people feared computers might simply fail. Banks, airlines, and hospitals worried their digital clocks would reset wrong. The problem came from older software storing years with only 2 digits. When those systems rolled from 99 to 0, dates looked prehistoric. Governments hired armies of programmers, especially in the United States and Europe. Engineers tested power grids, airline reservation systems, even traffic lights for glitches. Midnight finally hit in places like New Zealand, and nothing exploded. Most failures were tiny, like wrong dates on receipts and reports. The anticlimax looked silly later, but it came after massive behind-the-scenes work. Mayan long count calendar misread as guaranteed apocalypse in 2012. For a while in 2012, people genuinely whispered about the world ending. The panic centered on the ancient Maya long count calendar ending a big cycle. December 21st looked like a finish line, not just another winter solstice. Hollywood disaster movies and sensational documentaries happily pushed the doomsday storyline. Actual Mayan scholars kept explaining it was just a cycle resetting, like odometers. For the classic Maya, an ending simply meant a fresh era beginning. Tourists still packed sites like Chichen Itza, waiting for something dramatic anyway. When nothing happened, memes about failed apocalypses spread faster than old inscriptions. The whole episode showed how a sophisticated calendar became a modern superstition. The missing year 0 between 1 BC and AD 1. The strangest thing about our timeline is that year 0 never shows up. Historians count straight from 1 before Christ to 1 in the new era. That jump comes from early Christian scholars using Roman numerals, which lacked 0. A monk named Dionysius Exiguus helped popularize this dating system in late antiquity. Because of that, simple questions like millennium dates suddenly become weirdly complicated. Technically, the first century runs from year 1 to year 100. That means the second millennium finishes at the end of year 2000. Astronomers later adopted a year 0 for calculations, just to reduce confusion. So, depending who you ask, the same date can live in different centuries. George Washington's 2 different birthdays in old and new style. George Washington somehow picked up 2 official birthdays without time travel involved. He was originally born under the British Empire's old Julian calendar system. Back then in Virginia, the year still legally started in March, not January. Washington's birth was recorded as February 11, 1731, in that old style. When Britain finally adopted the Gregorian calendar, dates shifted forward 11 days. Officials also moved New Year's Day to January 1st, nudging his birth year. Suddenly, his birthday became February 22, 1732, under the new reckoning. Later celebrations, portraits, and schoolbooks all locked in the newer version. Today, both dates appear in serious biographies, depending which calendar they follow. October Revolution that actually happened. In November after calendar switch. Russia's famous October Revolution technically unfolded in November for most of the world. In 1917, Petrograd still used the old Julian calendar, lagging behind Western Europe. Bolshevik forces stormed the Winter Palace on October 25th by their local count. On the newer Gregorian calendar, the same day landed in early November. Slogans, posters, and later Soviet holidays kept the October branding anyway. When the new government finally adopted the Gregorian system, the name stayed stuck. Workers marched every November 7th, celebrating an October event on November streets. Foreign reporters constantly had to explain the calendar mismatch to curious readers. A political turning point became, accidentally, one of history's most famous date glitches. Julius Caesar's drastic calendar overhaul that froze winter for 90 days. Before Julius Caesar stepped in, the Roman calendar was an absolute mess. Priests controlled extra months, stretching or shrinking years for political advantage. Campaign seasons, tax deadlines, and even religious festivals drifted horribly off course. Caesar invited an Alexandrian astronomer, Sosigenes, to redesign Rome's entire timekeeping system. They decided on a solar calendar with regular leap years to stabilize seasons. To realign everything, the year 46 BCE became absurdly long and confusing. Romans later called it the Year of Confusion, with months jammed together. For a while, winter seemed to last forever, as dates slowly realigned. Once the chaos ended, the new Julian calendar dominated Europe for centuries. The monk, whose math likely misdated the birth year of Jesus. Much of our timeline may be off by a few years because of one monk. In the 6th century, Dionysius Exiguus tried calculating the exact year of Christ's birth. He worked backwards from Roman records, emperors, and known church councils. His calculations quietly ignored an earlier ruler, King Herod, and some historical clues. Later historians noticed that Herod likely died before Dionysius's chosen birth year. That suggests Jesus probably arrived a few years earlier than the official numbering. Despite the mistake, the system spread across Western Europe through church records. Kings signed documents, and scholars dated chronicles using his slightly skewed scheme. We now live with a global calendar built on one monk's imperfect math. French Revolutionary Calendar with 10-day weeks and decimal time. After the French Revolution, radicals even tried to overthrow the traditional week. They introduced a brand new calendar starting from the proclamation of the Republic. Months gained poetic names like Brumaire, Thermidor, and Fructidor, tied to seasons. Each month had 3 10-day weeks called decades, wiping out the old Sunday. For a brief moment, even clocks experimented with decimal hours and minutes. Workers disliked losing frequent rest days, and farmers hated relearning all the dates. Priests complained that feast days, saints, and familiar rhythms simply vanished overnight. Bureaucrats struggled to convert military orders and tax records between systems. Eventually, Napoleon scrapped the experiment, quietly bringing back the regular 7-day week. Napoleon's overnight abolition of the revolutionary calendar, restoring old dates. When Napoleon took power, he eventually killed the revolutionary calendar with one decision. By the early 19th century, administrators grumbled about double-dating everything for clarity. Merchants had to print almanacs showing both revolutionary and Gregorian dates together. Ordinary people still talked about Christmas and Sundays, ignoring the official day names. In 1805, Napoleon's government finally voted to restore the old Gregorian calendar. They picked a specific January 1st, when the Republic's year simply stopped advancing. Overnight, months like Brumaire and Floréal vanished from official paperwork and street talk. Printers rushed to update newspapers, church calendars, and military dispatches with familiar dates. The grand symbolic break from kings quietly ended as everyday convenience won. Soviet 5-day continuous work week that shattered the 7-day rhythm. In the early Soviet Union, the regular 7-day week briefly disappeared. Planners introduced a 5-day continuous work week to keep factories running non-stop. Every worker got a personal color code marking which day they rested. Machines never stopped, but families suddenly had mismatched days off and gatherings. Friends discovered they might not share a free day for weeks. Churches lost their Sunday crowds because nobody agreed on which day was Sunday. Calendars printed in the early 1930s showed dense grids with strange color patterns. Complaints piled up about broken community life, confusion, and worn-out workers. Within a few years, officials abandoned the experiment and returned to recognizable weeks. Stalin's later 6-day week experiment that workers completely hated. You would think one broken calendar experiment was enough, but Stalin tried another. After the 5-day system flopped, planners introduced a 6-day cycle instead. Workers labored for 5 days, then shared a common 6th-day rest together. This plan looked simpler on paper and kinder to family schedules. But it still ignored long-standing religious rhythms built around the 7-day week. People struggled to track holidays, saints' days, and old village traditions. Factories printed new wall calendars showing 5 working squares and 1 rest square. Even party members quietly admitted the constant changes were exhausting and confusing. By the mid-1930s, the Soviet Union finally restored the normal 7-day week. 10 lost days, when 1582 erased October 5th through 14th. In 1582, people in parts of Europe watched 10 October days vanish. Pope Gregory XIII ordered calendar reforms because Easter kept drifting away from spring. The solution was ruthless. Jump straight from October 4th to October 15th. In Italy, Spain, and Portugal, people went to sleep and skipped 10 dates. Rents, wages, and interest payments had to be recalculated across missing days. Lawyers argued whether deadlines fell on dates that technically never existed. Some villagers muttered that authorities had stolen days from their lives. Merchants scribbled double notes in ledgers to remember which system they used. Those 10 missing dates still appear today only as footnotes in history books. Britain losing 11 days overnight in the year 1752. When Britain finally modernized its calendar, it lost even more days at once. By the mid-18th century, British dates lagged behind continental Europe by 11 days. Parliament passed the Calendar Act, shifting the kingdom to the Gregorian system. In September 1752, people went to bed on the 2nd and woke on the 14th. Diaries from London record the sudden jump, sometimes with irritated margin notes. Sailors, merchants, and diplomats finally found their dates matching European partners again. The tax year quietly slid to keep revenue flowing without losing collections. Some people joked about suddenly having shorter lives thanks to missing days. The 11-day leap remains one of Britain's most dramatic bureaucratic changes. The myth of British riots over the missing 11 days. A famous story says Britons rioted, demanding their stolen days back. Caricatures show angry crowds shouting slogans about wanting 11 days returned. The legend comes partly from a satirical painting mocking confused politicians. In reality, historians find little evidence of huge nationwide calendar riots. There were complaints, letters, and local grumbling, but not massive uprisings. Some confusion came from wages and rents, since people feared losing money. Newspapers patiently explained that no one would miss pay because of shifting dates. The myth survived because it perfectly matches how bureaucracy feels to many. Today, the riot story is repeated more than the boring administrative truth. The legend that August stole a day straight from February. You often hear that Emperor Augustus stole a day from February for vanity. The tale claims he wanted August to match July with 31 days. According to the story, officials snatched a day from poor February's count. It sounds deliciously petty, which is why the legend keeps circulating. However, ancient evidence suggests month lengths were settled more systematically under earlier reforms. Julius Caesar's overhaul already specified which months would carry extra days. Patterns in old Roman calendars show February was always a bit unusual. Later explanations about imperial ego mostly appear in much later writings. Even so, the idea of emperors reshaping months feels perfectly Roman. First World War, summertime clocks that made trains stand still. During the First World War, governments messed with time to save coal. Germany introduced summertime, shifting clocks forward to stretch evening daylight hours. Britain and other countries quickly copied the idea, creating early daylight-saving experiments. Railways suddenly had to rewrite timetables, platform boards, and telegraph schedules overnight. For a few confusing hours, some trains appeared to stand still on paper. Passengers joked that journeys took negative time when clocks jumped forward. Signalmen and dispatchers received thick instruction booklets explaining the new time rules. Farmers grumbled that cows cared nothing about Parliament's opinions on sunrise. Despite the complaints, those wartime experiments laid foundations for modern daylight-saving systems. Leap seconds quietly added to clocks, and sometimes breaking the internet. Most people never notice leap seconds, but engineers absolutely sweat over them. To keep atomic clocks aligned with Earth's slightly wobbly rotation, officials add occasional seconds. When that happens, some systems see a minute with 61 counted seconds. Poorly designed software can panic when it meets this unexpected extra tick. Past leap seconds have crashed servers, overloaded websites, and slowed big tech platforms. Data centers in different countries suddenly disagreed about what time it exactly was. Engineers created clever workarounds, like smearing the extra second across several minutes. Each new announcement still sends warning emails racing through operations teams worldwide. It is a tiny calendar patch that sometimes breaks very large machines. The year 2038 problem that will confuse old digital clocks. Some older computers will effectively run out of time in January 2038. Many systems store seconds as a positive or negative number from 1970. In 32-bit form, that counter eventually overflows and flips into negative territory. When that happens, affected devices might suddenly believe it is December 1901. Embedded controllers in industrial equipment and older electronics are particular worries. Modern servers increasingly use 64-bit counters, pushing the problem far into future centuries. But legacy code often sits forgotten inside elevators, routers, or factory machines. Engineers are already testing firmware patches and watching for hidden, risky devices. It is a quieter cousin of Y2K, slowly ticking toward its deadline. GPS date rollovers that suddenly threw systems back into the 90s. Several times now, GPS receivers have suddenly believed they traveled decades into the past. The satellite system encodes weeks using a number that eventually wraps back to 0. When that rollover happens, older receivers may think the date restarted in the 1990s. Navigation units in ships, planes, or trucks have occasionally displayed wildly wrong dates. Position data might still work, but timing-dependent systems can get seriously confused. Some telecom networks rely on GPS timing to synchronize towers and equipment. Manufacturers issued firmware updates whenever a rollover approached on the calendar. Unpatched devices sometimes failed overnight, forcing emergency replacements and field visits. It is a reminder that even space-age clocks come with built-in expiration dates. Smartphone alarm glitches when daylight saving switched and hours repeated. Plenty of people have overslept because their smartphones misread daylight saving changes. During time shifts, clocks either jump forward or repeat a tricky overlapping hour. Some early smartphone operating systems struggled when the same hour appeared twice. Alarms scheduled inside that messy window sometimes failed to ring at all. Commuters in cities like Sydney and London reported missed trains and late meetings. Developers rushed to push software updates before the next seasonal clock change. Carriers also had to coordinate network time broadcasts with local government rules. Each region's decision about summertime became a programming headache for manufacturers. Modern phones handle it better, but everyone still double-checks alarms on change nights. The Microsoft Zune New Year's freeze caused by a leap year bug. On the last day of 2008, many Microsoft Zune players simply froze. Owners of the 30GB model watched their music players lock at boot screens. The problem hit worldwide at once, just hours before New Year's celebrations. Investigators discovered a software loop that mishandled the leap day that year. When the internal clock reached the 366th day, the code panicked. Every affected Zune waited stuck until the clock finally rolled into 2009. Users joked that their devices needed to sleep through the date glitch. Microsoft published instructions explaining that patience, not repairs, would unfreeze players. The incident became a classic example of calendar math breaking consumer gadgets. Samoa's 2011 time jump that completely deleted one calendar day. In 2011, the nation of Samoa erased a whole date from existence. Leaders decided to move the island to the west side of the date line. Their major trading partners were Australia and New Zealand, already living a day ahead. To sync business hours, Samoa jumped straight from Thursday to Saturday overnight. Local calendars skipped over a Friday that never officially existed there. Workers did not technically live through that skipped date on paper. Hotels adjusted bookings, and payroll departments recalculated wages for the missing day. Nearby, American Samoa stayed on the old side, now a full day behind. A short flight suddenly felt like traveling to yesterday on the clock. The day Samoa repeated July 4th to switch time zones. Samoa once pulled the opposite trick too, repeating the same date twice. In the 19th century, the islands decided to align with American trading partners. Officials chose to celebrate July 4th 2 days in a row during the change. By repeating that date, they effectively slid to the other side of the date line. Residents enjoyed the novelty of having the same calendar day twice. Merchants updated ledgers with careful notes about the repeated holiday. Sailors joked that Samoa must really love independence celebrations to double them. Later, the islands switched back again, trimming and stretching dates as needed. Samoa's history shows how politics can twist the calendar like a rubber band. Alaska's Friday to Friday dateline jump after American purchase. Alaskans once lived through 2 Fridays in a row thanks to geopolitics. When the United States purchased Alaska from Russia, calendars also had to change. Russian settlements used the Julian calendar and sat west of the date line. American authorities needed Alaska on the Gregorian system and the eastern side instead. In 1867, officials advanced the date by 11 days and shifted weekdays. The region jumped from Friday in the Russian system to Friday American style. Locals joked that they got to enjoy an extra weekend day. Churches and trading posts carefully noted which Friday matched which empire. The unique Double Friday marked Alaska's entry into a new time zone. Kiribati, redrawing the international dateline to celebrate millennium first. The Pacific nation of Kiribati literally bent global time to its advantage. Its islands straddled the dateline, meaning some lived almost a full day apart. Government leaders wanted the whole country celebrating New Year's together for the millennium. In the late 1990s, they announced a new time zone structure for Kiribati. The dateline effectively bent around their territory, putting all islands ahead. That change made Kiribati one of the first places to see 2000 sunrise. Television crews flew in to film the symbolic first dawn of the millennium. Critics grumbled, but time zone rules are mostly human agreements, not physical laws. Kiribati's move proved that even the planet's daily dividing line is negotiable. Philippines, skipping an entire day to join Asia's time zone. The Philippines once decided that one perfectly ordinary day simply would not exist. During the 19th century, the Spanish colony shifted its position relative to the dateline. Officials wanted Manila's calendar aligned with other Asian ports rather than the Americas. To accomplish this, they jumped forward, causing one calendar date to disappear. Newspapers moved directly from one numbered day to the next without an in-between. Sailors arriving from across the Pacific found different weekdays than expected. Local businesses updated receipts and ledgers, sometimes scribbling explanations in the margins. Ordinary residents mostly cared about how the change affected holidays and paydays. A quiet administrative decision permanently erased 24 hours from the country's printed history. Ethiopia's calendar running 7 years behind the rest of the world. Visitors to Ethiopia sometimes feel like they have stepped several years backward. The country still uses its own ancient calendar alongside international standards. Ethiopian years start in September and count differently from the Gregorian system. Because of that, their year number lags about 7 or 8 years behind. Posters, shop signs, and local documents may show 2 different year labels. Church traditions and agricultural cycles follow the Ethiopian calendar's 13 distinct months. One extra short month helps keep their religious festivals aligned with seasons. Airlines, banks, and embassies juggle both systems for tickets and contracts. Travelers often joke that visiting Ethiopia lets you briefly become younger on paper. Thailand's Buddhist era dates that seem 5 centuries in the future. In Thailand, official documents can make you feel like you jumped centuries ahead. The government often uses Buddhist era year numbers on forms and ID cards. Those dates count from a traditional estimate of the Buddha's passing. As a result, the calendar year sits over 500 years above Gregorian. A date that is 2025 elsewhere becomes 2568 in Thai paperwork. Tourists renting cars or signing contracts sometimes panic at the unfamiliar numbers. Local schools teach both systems so students can navigate global and regional timelines. Computer systems in Thailand frequently display dual-year formats to avoid confusion. It is a reminder that future-sounding dates may simply reflect different starting points. Japan's 1873 switch from lunar months to Western Gregorian years. Japan radically reshaped its calendar during the Meiji modernization push. For centuries, the country used a luni-solar system with variable month lengths. Farmers, priests, and officials tracked time through a mix of moons and seasons. In the 1870s, the new government decided to adopt the Western Gregorian calendar. The switch happened quickly, with New Year's Day suddenly moved to January 1st. Traditional Lunar New Year celebrations were effectively pushed aside by decree. Officials promoted the new system as a sign of joining modern industrial powers. Diaries from the period show people carefully double-recording old and new dates. The abrupt change compressed festivals and reshuffled anniversaries for millions overnight. Turkey's 1926 leap from Islamic to Gregorian calendar system. In the 1920s, Turkey redefined its sense of time as part of sweeping reforms. The young republic under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk sought to modernize law and administration. One bold move replaced the Islamic lunar calendar with the Gregorian solar system. Overnight, dates on government documents and business contracts jumped to new numbering. Religious observances still followed lunar cycles, but civil life now matched Europe. Newspapers printed side-by-side tables explaining how old and new dates corresponded. Teachers had to explain that familiar years suddenly looked completely different in numbers. Foreign diplomats welcomed easier scheduling with Western partners and neighboring countries. The calendar shift symbolized Turkey's broader pivot towards secular Western-style institutions. Greece's late adoption of Gregorian calendar, losing 13 more days. Greece joined the Gregorian calendar club later than many European neighbors. By the early 20th century, its Julian dates were 13 days behind. In the 1920s, Greek authorities finally decided to fix the widening discrepancy. They jumped from a late February date straight into March, skipping 13 days. Some Orthodox believers worried that changing calendars might affect holy celebrations. The Church eventually adopted its own approach, keeping traditional dates for certain feasts. Villages sometimes observed holidays on slightly different days than government offices did. Newspaper archives from that era suddenly show a gap in daily issues. The reform closed the seasonal drift, but left a legacy of dual observances. Sweden accidentally creating a real February 30th in 1712. Sweden's attempt to change calendars created the legendary date of February 30th. The plan was to gradually move from the Julian system to the Gregorian one. Instead of skipping days all at once, they would omit certain leap days. The project was poorly managed, and some scheduled omissions never actually happened. By the early 1700s, Sweden's calendar no longer matched either major system. To fix it, authorities added an extra leap day in 1712. That move produced a rare February with 30 full days on Swedish paper. Official documents and church records truly listed a February 30th that year. After more confusion, Sweden eventually abandoned the experiment and reset its approach. Sweden's failed calendar reform that took 40 years to untangle. The February 30th incident was just one chapter in Sweden's calendar chaos. The original gradual shift plan launched in 1700 but quickly fell apart. Wars, distractions, and administrative mistakes meant leap days were skipped inconsistently. Decades later, officials finally adopted the full Gregorian calendar in a single jump. The long saga became a case study in how not to manage calendar reform. The year Britain moved New Year from March to January. Besides losing days, Britain also shifted when the legal year actually began. Before the 1750s, official documents treated March 25th as New Year's Day. A date in February belonged to the previous year, despite winter passing. This made interpreting older records extremely tricky for later historians and lawyers. The Calendar Act changed not just the date count, but the year's starting point. From then on, January 1st became the legal beginning of each year. For a while, writers used double dates like 1708-09 for late winter entries. Genealogists still puzzle over ancestors apparently born, married, or buried out of order. One law compressed an entire season's worth of dates into different numbered years. Medieval confusion over whether the year started at Christmas or March. Even before Britain standardized things, Europe could not agree on New Year's Day. Different regions picked different starting points for the year on their calendars. Some counted from Christmas, others from March, and some from local feast days. A letter dated early January might belong to different years depending on city. Monasteries sometimes followed their own traditions separate from nearby royal courts. Traveling merchants crossed borders and found that yesterday's year no longer matched. Later chroniclers tried to tidy timelines, but contradictions kept slipping through. Modern historians often annotate medieval dates to explain which system was used. What looks like simple math today once required expert local calendar knowledge. Colonial documents using dual Old-style and New-style date notations. Early American and British records sometimes show dates written with two different years. You will see entries like February 10, 1748/49 in old manuscripts. These double dates reflect overlapping calendars during the switch from Julian reckoning. Officials wanted to avoid confusion while New Year's Day moved to January. For legal clarity, scribes listed both the old year and the new one. Court cases, land deeds, and church registers sometimes carry these careful dual markings. Modern transcribers must decide which year to use in databases and indexes. Genealogy guides devote sections to explaining how to interpret such hybrid notations. A small slash mark quietly reveals a world wrestling two calendars into one. Ancient Roman politicians quietly stretching or shortening months for politics. Long before Caesar's reform, Roman timekeeping was a political playground. High priests controlled when to insert extra months into the old calendar. Those decisions affected when magistrates' terms ended and elections were held. Allies might gain longer time in office if friends controlled the calendar. Opponents could find their mandates shortened by conveniently skipping an intercalary month. This manipulation scrambled farming schedules and religious festivals tied to seasonal signs. Ordinary Romans complained that the civil year no longer matched the sun. By Caesar's era, the gap between calendar dates and seasons had grown embarrassing. The abuse of time itself helped justify his radical calendar overhaul. Medieval feast days sliding across seasons. As calendars drifted from reality. Over centuries, some medieval feast days slowly slid away from their intended seasons. The Julian calendar ran slightly fast, causing dates to drift against the solar year. Spring festivals crept earlier, while official equinox dates no longer matched the sky. Farmers noticed that traditional planting blessings arrived long before practical sowing time. Church councils occasionally complained that Easter seemed increasingly detached from real spring. Local almanacs tried to reconcile star positions with church-approved calendar pages. Pilgrims traveling to shrines compared notes about weather and feast timing across regions. By the Middle Ages, the growing mismatch made reform feel increasingly necessary. That long drift eventually inspired the drastic Gregorian corrections with missing days. Leap day babies, whose official birthdays appear only every 4 years. For people born on February 29th, birthdays are a mathematical prank. Their exact calendar date shows up only during leap years with extra days. In non-leap years, they usually celebrate on February 28th or March 1st. Legal systems around the world had to decide how to handle age milestones. Some countries treat February 28th as the official birthday for paperwork. Others push recognition to March 1st when calculating adulthood or retirement. Parents of leap day babies often collect quirky newspaper stories and local attention. Statistical records show surprisingly small but persistent clusters of these rare birthdays. A simple trick of calendar design turns everyday age questions into fun puzzles.